Let's talk about rehabbing. Now, thanks to HGTV, we all know what rehabbing is. Well, we at least know the entertainment version of it. It's very different in practicality. Now, in this lesson, we're also going to talk about my new favorite exit strategy. I say new, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, which we call wholetailing. It's kind of a hybrid between wholesaling and retailing or rehabbing, but we'll get to that. Let's start with rehabbing. So what is rehabbing outside of at a high level, taking an ugly house and making it pretty again? Well, it's one of the exit strategies you can use to make money. Now, inside of this master class that you're watching right now, we talk about wholesaling and assignment of contract. We talk about keeping houses as rentals, and we also talk about rehabbing. Now, rehabbing is probably the most well-known exit strategy for newer investors because we've seen some shows on TV, but it's not the path that you should always take. See, it's generally about the hardest way you can do a deal with the most risk, but I found that if you do it right, it might be one of the most gratifying if you like the transformation of taking something terrible and disgusting sometimes and making it beautiful again. Now, it's often, but not always, the most profitable exit strategy you can take, but it's not without a whole lot of work, drama, and risk, honestly. So what are some of the pros and cons? Well, let's talk about that. One of the main pros I would talk about is the joy of the transformation. I actually love to rehab. I'm not doing any of the work myself, but I love coming up with some ideas that are going to make a transformation. Now, truthfully, I say I'm coming up with ideas after rehabbing hundreds of houses. They pretty much all look the same. We use a lot of the same materials over and over again. Another pro is the opportunity often to make more money if you do it right. And again, there's some satisfaction sometimes in improving your community and just feeling good about what you created there for something you can be proud of. There's a lot of cons, though. They're time consuming. They're more risky. You need lots of capital. There are lots of administrative type duties, bookkeeping, vendor management, and you have to deal with a lot of other people. Agents, appraisers, inspectors, lenders, code compliance, contractors and subcontractors, on and on and on. But ultimately, you need to decide what's right for you. Now, I have a general belief that active real estate investors should use all exit strategies based upon the opportunity at hand. I don't really understand wholesaling or assigning everything. I don't understand keeping everything as rentals, and I don't understand rehabbing every single opportunity that you come across, because there are exit strategies for each scenario that you come across, and you shouldn't always do the same thing. You don't want to miss out on a cherry rehab in the best part of town because you say you're only a wholesaler, but you could make 3 or 4 times more profit doing it. Okay. One of the most challenging parts of a rehab is contractors. Let's talk about finding the right contractor. The contractor is, these are people that can really make or break your rehabbing career. Or should I say contractors, from general contractors to specialty type contractors like roofers, plumbers, electricians, foundation folks, and so on. There is no silver bullet at finding the right contractors. But let's discuss some of the different types of contractors that are out there. They'll become a little more clear on how to find ones that will work for you. There are 3 different contractor types that I'll talk about here. Kind of the handyman, what we call chuck in a truck. A friend of mine came up with that and I like it, so I'm going to use it. And the professional general contractor. So let's start with a handyman. Handyman is usually kind of a lone wolf. Somebody doing the work mostly themselves. They might have a son working with them or one other person, but it's usually an individual, often. They're usually less polished from a business standpoint. Don't have business cards, drive an old pickup truck. They're a jack of all trades, but they're really not an expert at anything. One of the challenges is they'll never tell you that there's anything that they cannot do. If you say, can you paint? Yes. Can you lay tile? Yes. Can you do some electrical work? Oh yeah, I can do that. They'll tell you they can do everything because they probably have done it before. They want to believe they can do it, but they might not necessarily be the right person for you. The handyman is likely the least expensive, but they might be the least reliable as well. They're usually not able to float the cost of materials for you, so they're much more needy from a standpoint. They may want to get paid. I've had contractors early on when I had some folks like this that would call me literally and say, I don't have enough gas to get home today. Can you come give me a partial payment? Which is just not something that anybody should be doing. Okay. So look, you're competing with their time. This is another challenge of the handyman, is you're competing with their time to look for the next gig. A lot of the handyman type person is spending half of their job looking for the next job. So they might be on your job and get a call for the next job, and they're going to go bid that. So you're competing with their time to get your work done. The next up, we're going to talk about chucking a truck. Now, this is really kind of a smaller contractor that might be managing one team, also probably doing work on the job themselves. They have 3 or 4 helpers that are helping, but they're in there hanging doors and doing work themselves. They're really the crew leader responsible for managing the work and the flow of materials, but they're kind of on the job managing it as well. The challenge with this person is that they generally can't manage more than 1 to 2 jobs at a time. So as you ramp up, you are going to have some challenges of ramping up with that person. Another challenge similar to the handyman is that they're not only spending time looking for the next job and more jobs, they are also constantly looking for more subcontractors, employees, because there tends to be a lot of turnover in that space. Next, we're going to talk about the professional general contractor. Now, this person is more professional and organized, generally, usually more detail-oriented. They usually have several layers of management. So they might have a crew leader that's on the job, a project manager that's going around to a few jobs, making sure that everything's on track and maybe supplying materials, and they probably have business development or sales guys that are driving around bidding on more jobs. So the challenge is that there's lots of layers of management, and those are extra layers of cost. Without a doubt, this is generally going to be the most expensive route. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's just the reality. The professional general contractor is more likely to communicate with you through technology. They could send you invoices. They can manage projects. They can actually send you pictures of what's going on. Now, generally, overall, with these 3 options, the less you spend on a contractor, if you use the handyman versus the professional GC, the more of your own time you're going to need to spend managing that person. You're going to find as a real estate investor, if you kind of cheap out and use the handyman, you're going to have to watch them more closely. You may have to actually go look at the job yourself to see if they're on track or where they're at. With more of the professional type general contractor, they are more likely to understand that time is money, and they're trying to get through jobs as fast as possible because they're doing a lot of them. So generally, the more you're willing to spend, the less of your own time you'll have to spend managing them. Now let's talk about some contractor tips. Actually, before we get into contractor tips, let me just say what I prefer. Now, it depends on where you are in your business. I tend to like more of the chuck in a truck type person. Okay, somebody that is willing to get their hands dirty if they have to get the job done. They can manage a few houses at a time, a few projects at a time. I think it's a good thing for a lot of newer real estate investors, those getting started. Don't cheap out so much that you just get the handyman that can't validate. You can't validate that they're really going to do the job, and don't be so afraid to take on a little risk that you're hiring a very expensive general contractor that has lots of layers of costs that might basically eat up a big portion of your profit. Let me share a few contractor tips for you generally. The 2 most important things of dealing with a general contractor, these are always the issues: payments and communications, and the combination of those 2. Generally, I would advise you to pay as little in advance as possible. I tend to not pay anything in advance, but it's been years in the making where people know that they will get paid like clockwork. Okay, there probably aren't a lot of contractors that will rely on your word as a new real estate investor. They may ask for some money up front, but you want to minimize that as much as possible. You must have very clear communications and get things in writing. Get all bids, timeframes, and scope of work in writing. Agree to the payment terms up front, in detail, and in writing. Talk to them frequently to see where they're at or if they are on track. I would advise you to only work with people that were recommended by somebody else that you know and trust. And never, never, never pay in full until the job is 100% done, including the final punch list. Now here's what happens with the rehab. They get done, they say they're done, but you walk around and, well, that ceiling fan doesn't have bulbs in it, and the garbage disposal doesn't turn on even though it's been replaced. There are lots of little items that will kind of be on your final punch list. You have to hold some money back. If you're new and you're not doing a lot of rehabs, the odds of paying somebody in full and getting them to come back and do what they need to get done is slim and none. So I'm not saying to hold back a lot of money, but maybe if you hold back $500 or so, depending on the size of the project, then you have some incentive for them to come back. Now, truthfully, most of them will abide by their word and they know they need to do it, but everybody is just busy. A lot of contractors are not making a ton of money. They're living largely paycheck to paycheck. They have to pay their subcontractors. So just be very careful at paying everything out too fast, because you may not be able to get them back if you need to. Let's talk a little bit about levels of rehabbing. So when I first started, the first few years, we rehabbed lots of houses. We always made them the nicest house on the street, granite everywhere, stainless everywhere, new texture, you name it. We were going all out. Every house was like brand new. And some of that is the market we were in. We were in a buyer's market, so buyers had more control, so we had to be nicer than everybody else. When you're in a seller's market, you don't have to do that as much. But what I learned over time is that quality is not the only lever you have as a real estate investor. You also have price. You could play the Nordstrom model or the Walmart model. Now at Walmart, it looks nice, everything's fine, it works, but it's a little cheap, right? And I'm not saying to cheap out or cut corners that are going to mislead somebody, but there are people that are willing to buy a fixer-upper, house that needs work, but it is livable now. So hopefully that makes sense. So you don't have to be the nicest house on the street. Sometimes you can be $20,000 under all the other ones. Yeah, you need work, but some people are willing to take on that risk. That's effectively what wholetailing is. I told you that is my favorite model now. We do a lot of that. So what is wholetailing? Let's talk some more about it. The best explanation I can give is we tend to, if anything, fix the scary stuff, are the things that are perceived to add a lot of value. So if I were to buy a house that's cluttered and has a lot of junk in it, maybe they left a bunch of furniture in there, the yard's full of clutter, what we might do is maybe we spend $2,000 cleaning it out, but that might add $10,000 in value because it helps kind of create a blank slate. Prior to that, people might be afraid of all the junk in there. They just can't see past it. But we can fill a few dumpsters and add some value that way. There's a hole in the roof, foundation problems, things like that we can fix. A lot of people can see past wallpaper and paint and flooring and some outdated colors, but big structural type stuff is scary to people. So the more work a house needs, the less appealing it is to a buyer. So we fix some of the quick things that are relatively easy for us or inexpensive things, or the big scary things to invite more potential buyers in. Now, in a seller's market, inventory is harder to find. You don't have to be the prettiest house on the street anymore because you just have to be available because there's not as much inventory. So it's easier to appeal with to a seller to a buyer, with a less than perfect house. There are people that are okay settling for a fixer-upper. Now, by the way, the wholesale model also works well. I believe this really works best at first-time homebuyer type houses. There are people that mow their own lawn, change their own oil, cut their kids' hair. They believe in sweat equity. They're willing to do some work if they get value in it. Now, those same people that are willing to buy below market value, a fixer-upper, are generally willing to pay more than a real estate investor. They're not looking to try to make money by flipping it again. They're really looking to get a good deal on the equity, and they're planning to live there for some time. So what you're really looking for is somebody that's okay with earning sweat equity. They also look at it, this is my general belief, in a way like this. As a real estate investor, if I think the cost to repair a house is $20,000, they may see it as 10. And here's why. For me, at least 50-60% of the cost of most of the rehabs that I do is labor, ultimately. Peeling wallpaper, adding new texture. Paint is relatively cheap. Peeling wallpaper doesn't really cost much. It's the labor component of it. So when people see those things, they may think the cost of getting that house up to the level that they would like is inexpensive. It's just going to require their time. As a business owner, I understand that time is money, but a lot of people don't quite see their time that way. They just see, I'm going to get a really good deal, but I'm going to do the work myself. Hopefully that makes sense. Look, we've got a great bonus for you here inside of your guide. If you haven't downloaded the guide, click the link down below here and you'll get it. But we have a rehab price list for you. Now with this free guide inside of your inside of your masterclass here with the rehab price list. Hey guys, just a quick reminder that you can get access to all 10 of the training videos in this masterclass that we call the Ultimate Get Started in Real Estate Investing Guide and Program, as well as this awesome supplemental guide with incredibly valuable copies of our contracts, scripts, checklists, and many more by visiting us at flipnerd.com/free training. That's flipnerd.com/free-training. 2 separate words there. You'll get immediate access to all 10 lessons of this powerful masterclass. I know you're watching it on YouTube right now, but that's how you get all of our downloadable checklists and all sorts of other information. You'll get immediate access to all 10 of our lessons of this powerful masterclass. You'll get this free resource guide, and we'll share some other powerful content with you as well. So going over to flipnerd.com/free training, that's free-training now to get registered. You'll find that it'll help you start to evaluate the costs of certain items that you have in your rehab, flooring to paint, texture, and other things. It's a great tool to give you a head start on pricing when you're evaluating your next rehab. And of course, in a previous lesson, we gave you the field analysis to evaluate our rehab overall. These are some great tools that are a part of your free guide. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you get a lot of value out of this. In summary, rehabbing ain't easy, but it's rewarding and profitable. It's not something you should do on every house. It's also possible that a rehab could eat your lunch if you don't know what you're doing. In fact, you should never take on a significant rehab if you're new. You should never probably rehab your first house, certainly not a massive rehab, okay, because the learning curve could be costly. If you're just getting started in real estate investing and you're trying to grow your business, don't get knocked out at the beginning. Try to stay safe. Rehabbing is just one way of many to make money in the real estate investing business. Hope you got some value out of this. I'll see you in the next lesson. Hey everybody, just a reminder, thanks for watching this incredibly powerful masterclass lesson. I hope you got a lot out of it. Just a reminder that you can get access to all 10 of the training videos in this masterclass that we call the Ultimate Get Started in Real Estate Investing Training Program and Guide. You can get this supplemental guide, which is full of valuable copies of our contracts, checklists, the scripts we use when we talk to sellers, and so much more. Quite frankly, we've never given away all this free content before, so it's super powerful. To get access to all of this, you simply need to go to flipnerd.com/free training, and that's flipnerd.com/free-training to get access to everything. It's completely free, but we can't give you downloads on YouTube. You have to come over to our site to get them. You'll get immediate access, again, to all 10 lessons of this powerful masterclass. You'll get this free resource guide, and we'll share some other powerful, awesome content with you as well. So going over to flipnerd.com/free-training now to get registered. See you on the other side.